people from Andrew Henry School. And you all know where Andrew Henry School is? It's the one that's at the junction of PB and Wayland Road, correct? That little school right on the corner before you go up the hill on Wayland, the little brick, isn't it brick? School, or stone?
Stone.
Rock? Block. Block. That covers a multitude of sins. So Arlene's going to conduct the people. Hopefully she'll have the people come up and that have attended and give their views, and I know some of them have quite a bit to say. And then Doug Dahlk also has brought a map that he's going to explain a little further. He was an 8-year student at Andrew Henry School along with Arlene, and I don't know about the rest of you. So Arlene, it's all yours. Thank you so much for doing this.
Go Andrew Henry. How many people do I have here from Andrew Henry? I see Dick Durfer, I see Janice Bruni, Doug Dahlk, Wayne Strauss, Nancy. Okay, I'm Arlene. Okay, I'm not used to this. Okay, I'm Arlene Scher Burke. My dad was Joe Scher and Bernice Scher. They made cheese at the Wild Cheese Factory, where Gray's Tide House is right now. And I went to school for 8 years at Andrew Henry. So the first thing we were trying to do is determine who Andrew Henry was. And we found out in the 1860 to 1870 census record showed Andrew Henry, but not the location of his residence. Then in 1870, they listed an Andrew Henry in the town of Madison as a machinery dealer. And I don't know if anybody else knows any more information. And then I had, let's see, 1890 to 1911, Dane County plat maps showed Charles Cross as owning the land of the Andrew Henry School. Doug Dahlk tells me that Andrew Henry lived in the farm west of Andrew Henry, which is where Rockweilers live now. It was the Ed Wild farm. So that's what I know about that part. Then, thinking about the day, I was thinking about the subjects that we had, reading, arithmetic, writing, science, social studies. We had writing books at that time where you had to sit up straight and make your circles and write correctly, which is kind of going out these days. We had a lot of spelling. I had Mrs. Featherston, Dorothea Featherston, for 6 years. We did a lot of spelling and that. And then one big thing is we always helped the children in the lower grades. And I kind of always enjoyed that. You could work with the younger children, teaching them. And of course the teacher would be up in front with the students, and the rest of us would be back at our seats doing our work. And you couldn't even barely whisper. You were at your desk and you did your work. As far as art, music, and Phi Ed, we had art through Let's Draw. Professor Schwalbach from the university did that. Music was Fanny Steed, and of course we were kind of impressed. This little older lady with her high heels and her cute little hair and her nails all painted. And as far as Phi Ed, we just, recess was our Phi Ed. We had hot lunch where you'd bring a pint of milk and somebody, would cook the lunch. I always liked their barbecued homemade sandwiches or homemade buns. And then they also had peanut butter cookies. We talked one time we had to take goiter pills. So I think it was once a week. There's all those little chocolatey things you had to take. We had community club once a month, which was always kind of fun, where your parents went and the kids went along and you could have lunch, etc., which was kind of fun. Then I was just thinking about the fun things. In October, we always had a Halloween party. You'd get blindfolded in your younger days and walk down the steps, and grapes for the eyeballs and spaghetti for the innards, and then they'd have a board where they'd have a pipe on that they'd wheel you back and forth, and you always had a lunch. We always had a Christmas program that you'd have to practice. We had a curtain and everything. You'd have plays, and of course those days you sang religious songs, and then Here Comes Santa Claus, and we had a Santa Claus, and you'd get an orange, hard candy, and popcorn ball, and we thought that was great. We also made gifts. I remember one year we had to make a pot holder, and you can imagine making a pot holder and hand stitching it. It was pretty ugly. Easter, when you got older, you could color the eggs and you hid them outside for the younger kids. We also had a play day. We came into Verona for that, and oh gosh, you practice, you'd get blue ribbons or whatever, and the wheelbarrow race and sack race, etc. You'd be practicing, so maybe you could win a prize. We also played ball with other schools, and it seems like Andrew Henry never won as far as my recollection is, but we would go to Maple Grove, Valley View, McPherson, maybe Maple Corners. I don't know so much about the White School. And then we always had a spring cleanup, and you would bring your rakes and have to rake the lawn, and you'd have a fire. Today we might fall in, and then you'd have hot dogs and marshmallows, etc. And then I was going to tell you, Carol Matz Weiss was in my class, and on the 1st of February, I received a handwritten note from her regarding her memories, and she passed away on February 14th. And she had a few things that we had outdoor toilets until 6th grade. And of course, they were always tipped over at Halloween time. You always remember that. Water, we got out of the pump outside, which I don't remember, but that was her memory. Curtain, of course, in front for the Christmas program, etc. And let's see, was that about it from Carol? She had 2 pages here. Oh, she said there were 16 farmers and only one left, and that was Dick Durfer. I was trying to count up all those 16 farms, but she said at one time there were 16 and Durfer was the only one left, and Dick Durfer's right over there, so he might know. Then I got a little, I had another note from Carol's 2 sisters, Kathy and Sherry, and she remembers that the whole school would go over to the Dane County Hospital and Home and present a Christmas program. And kids always brought cookies. Now, we didn't do that, but she's younger than I am. And then she said at one time the whole school would go over to the cheese factory and watch Mr. Scherer make cheese, which was my dad. And then they would have butter and jelly on crackers. And she said she thought that was such a treat, and I don't remember that either. So. They had, well, another thing I was thinking about, our desks, we didn't have separate desks. We had the all connected ones, and so that was a little different. So that, I have, I don't know, Doug Delk, if you wanted to say a few words. And Doug also brought maps here from one of the schools.
How much time have you got? I've got 3 pages here, but I won't use them all. Good to see you, Dick, and some of the other classmates, Janice. I actually want to, first of all, I want to introduce my wife, Gail. Actually, Gail and I do actually own a one-room school. We bought the Primrose Center School, and I completely renovated it, and so that's our residence now. So these items that Arlene spoke about, over here, the books and the old maps, and actually that thing that's called a staff that she used to draw the marks on the chalkboard to make music, treble clef and that stuff on there. I've got one of those that I made myself. And then another item that it lays there is milkweed pots. And back after the Second World War, they didn't have synthetic things to make life vests for the sailors and some of the Marines. and they discovered that milkweed silks, the things inside the milkweed pod, would float. And so as a public service project, we would go and collect milkweed pods. And so that's a thing of interest. And I wanted to make mention, Arlene, they were right across the street with the cheese factory there. And before we got a well drilled, couple of the upperclassmen boys would take a cream can and go over there and get our cold water and put it in a bubbler thing, and that's how we had water until the well was drilled in 1949, and then we had indoor toilets and had running water. But it's so quaint, you'd wonder why they couldn't drill the well in the middle of the summer. It seemed like Wayne Lampman from Blue Mountains came with his old wooden derrick rig and set that up, and you'd think they could have got the well drilled in the middle of the summer, but the first day of school, the rig was there, and we had to study with that thing pounding all day long, driving the casing in. But anyway, we got water, and we had modern conveniences, and we didn't have to use the outdoor toilet. Some of the upper grade boys, I don't think I was involved, but that was kind of a thing to do when the gals would go into the toilet. They'd go over there and rock the toilet and see once if they could scare them. And we had done a lot of crazy things. I'll touch on a few. You wouldn't think, of course, I went to school there from 1945 till 53, and back then the traffic wasn't on Wayland or on PB like it is today. And so, by golly, if you can imagine that Wayland Road was a gravel road, and when it would get snowpacked, we would actually sleigh ride from the top of Detweiler's Hill down across PB and up the ramp to the cheese factory. Can you imagine crossing a county highway with a sled? Well, anyway, we did it, and we all survived. But anyway, then other winter recreation, Lester Detweiler always had a pond that flooded across Wayland Road, and we'd go over there and we'd play broom hockey, and nobody had skates, but we'd just run around and shoot the wooden block of wood, and that was some of our recreation. Can you imagine going on other people's property and for liability purposes? But anyway, it was a great school. I had 8 years there, and Etta D was my first grade teacher. Zona Scott was my second and third grade teacher, and I don't know if anybody knew Zona the Scotts, but he was the boxing coach here in Verona, and he lived in the projector room in the old school, the high school up there, and that's where the Scotts lived. And I guess Zona needed a job because she come out and taught second and third grade. But about at that time, they were converting from learning to sound words out with phonics, and there was word recognition. And Zona wasn't my favorite teacher and wasn't the best teacher by no means. But anyway, there was Mavis Ralston and 3 other boys that were in the class and myself, and Mavis got the word recognition, and she could read brilliantly, but Doug Duck and the other 2 boys, we were kind of stammering around. So the supervising teacher, we always had 2 supervising teachers, Fran Kimmy and Blanche Lazinski. I don't know if that rings a bell with any of you folks or not, but anyway, when there was a little snag in the operation at the school, those supervising teachers would show up, and I can remember getting in a corner with Blanche, and she was kind of a stern lady, and she would work with us and sound those words out. And it wasn't long in working with our mom and dad, they were very strict about sticking to the books, and so it wasn't long we were reading with the rest of them. But that was some of our academic things. I can think back a little younger than Arlene. We had a music teacher, Mrs. Behrens, and some of the older boys called her Ball Behrens. They didn't like music. But anyway, can you imagine back then, I think Dick could attest to that, but back then, you could get a driver's license when you're 14 years old and drive by daylight, as long as you were doing farm chores or doing things for the farm. My brother Curtis happened to have it, and John Oldie also had it. So anyway, Johnny, he drove to school quite regularly. And if you can imagine, when Mrs. Behrens was teaching the undergrades, we would slide the back window, not me in particular, but some of the older boys would slide the back window, get out on the fuel oil tank, slide out and get into John Oldie's car and go over and see Jerry Loney, another kid that went to school but wasn't there that day. And we'd take a ride around the block. And how Zona Scott didn't have a firmer grip on us, I'll never know. But things were kind of funny in some of our, but we still got a good education. I don't know, some of the other things of interest, Arlene done a beautiful job on covering it. Our territory there actually, for the Andrew Henry School, started at Carnes and went over to Locust Road. We picked up the Oldies, which was the place up on Locust. And then we went to Range Trail and got the Nafe Farm and Lottie Gust, Ray Gust. Is Ray here? I don't know. But that's where he lived.
I spoke with him, I thought he was coming.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the end of Range Trail that encompassed us. And then we took M all the way over. On the end was Gail's Uncle Melvin Baumgartner, the John Batker Farm. That was the end of the trail on M. So, and then we started at the county home. The superintendent was Bill Emerton at that time, and the assistant was Earl Kruger. Those kids came to Andrew Henry, right from the county home. And so we had a pretty good sized school. It averaged between 20 and 25 students. And my fourth grade teacher was Doris Raisback. And then I had 4 years with, like Arlene, with Dorothea Featherstone. She was a Schmidt girl. So anyway, you're welcome to take a look at those old maps. When we bought the old Primrose School, I discovered those books and maps in the attic, and actually I found a lot of broken up desks in that attic of that old school. And I reassembled those desks, and so our rec room has a theme of a school, and so I've got a blackboard and everything associated with an old one-room school. And so I'll let some other people talk. Thank you very much.
Janice, I see Janice. Do you want to go next? Did you have something?
I might make mention, it sounded like we didn't do much studying, but actually we had 3 or 4 kids out of our Andrew Henry that became valedictorians and salutatorians in the Verona school system. And so we're pretty proud of that. In fact, Arlene's brother, Roger, was one of those that were valedictorian, and I think my neighbor girl, Mavis Ralston, was salutatorian, and I think her brother was a valedictorian. And I don't know what Janice, was Ron a valedictorian or salutatorian?
I don't know about
He was pretty smart.
that. You know, as we're getting older, we kind of forget.
Yeah.
Well, I am Janice Bruni, used to be, Selvig right now. And I went to Andrew Henry School for 8 years. And I do have a picture here of Andrew Henry School in 1940. And I've identified quite a few of them. Alice Huffman is in the first row, and this picture I got from her husband, Joe Molly. And Richard is on here, and John Oldie, and the Whitwers, and the Durfers. And if you want to look at it, I've got names of some of them identified, and some of the rest of you maybe can identify the rest. class. I don't know who the teacher was at that time,
Mrs. Smith.
but I have that up here. And then I have article written by my brother, and he says, oh, you want this? Andrew Henry School, my alma mater, a gem in the memories of my mind. I fondly recall the little one-room schoolhouse that was the social center of our lives in my childhood. It was where I first met Ray Gus, and we were classmates for all 8 years and beyond. No one in school today can understand what it meant to have all 8 grades in one room with one teacher. Oh yes, there were some specialty teachers that came to school for art, music, and some other programs, and we also listened to programs that came to us over the radio. Our one-room schoolhouse was where the parents gathered each month for the community club evening while the kids played outside. Our school was well equipped with playground equipment. We had a merry-go-round and some swings. Not quite like the schools are equipped today, but we had a good time anyway. I remember the plumbing we had at Andrew Henry. Well, I guess calling those outdoor toilets plumbing is a stretch, but they were oh so comfy on those cold winter days. At least one didn't waste too much time there. And the central heating system, again, I guess calling it a system is a stretch, but it kept us warm if it was not too cold outside. We didn't do much texting or using a phone at all, for that matter. No TV, no internet as a study aid. But we did have fun with our outdoor games like Prisoner's Goal, Duck, Duck, Goose, Softball, and others that are too long ago to remember the names. Some other memories include marching in after lunch, standing by our desk, and singing a patriotic song or pledging allegiance to flag before afternoon classwork began. Mrs. D always ended the morning with a rapid fire math session in which the challenge was to get the same answer to the problem as she did. The class that Ray and I were in increased in second grade, maybe third grade, when Ruth Davis joined our school. The three of us continued together through high school. I don't know if our education would be equivalent to what is taught today, but it sure was a good education for me. And that's signed by Ronald Bruni. And he lives up in Baraboo now, so. And then I have what I've written here. It says, Andrew Henry was the school I started first grade in and graduated 8th grade from. Walter Brink was my teacher in first grade and part of second grade. He was a wonderful teacher. In this school, there was a big furnace in the basement with a huge register in the floor to heat the whole school. We could stand on the register to warm up when we came in from recess. One day I had a bad toothache, and Mr. Brink took my scarf, warmed it on the register, and then put it on the side of my face over the aching tooth. It helped a lot. Not only was he a good teacher, but a very caring person. We had a class on Tuesdays called Let's Draw. It came over the radio station WHA, and we had to draw a picture pertaining to the story. Our pictures were hung on the wall, and when they had community club, they all looked at them. I was so embarrassed because mine was the worst one. A music teacher came once a week, Miss Behrens. She played piano, and we would square dance and sing. She also worked with us on our Christmas program. One day, when she was ready to leave, her car wouldn't start. Some boys had plugged the exhaust with dirt. We had outdoor toilets. How lovely were they? They usually got tipped over at Halloween, so someone would have to upright them again. In the hall, there was a tank with a spigot for our drinking water. We would be given an iodine pill for goiter prevention. They were so bitter, occasionally when no one was looking, I'd throw mine away. This was a one-room schoolhouse. We all had desks. Each desk would take turns, or each class would take turns going to the front of the school with a teacher to go through our lessons. There were 8 grades in our school, small table and chairs for the lower grades, and a large table and chairs for the upper grades. We had cold lunches from home. Eventually, someone got the idea to bring a jar of vegetable or other food to warm up on the big register. It was great and helped a lot, especially on the cold days. Recess was fun. We had games or played baseball. I guess it was softball. Girls along with the boys. From Andrew Henry, we went on to Verona High School or Edgewood. And this is written by Janice Bruni, myself, Janice Selvig. Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that one letter, and they mentioned Ray Guthrie. I just dragged him in here. He's back here, one of the alumni.
Oh, I don't see him.
Yeah, he's back.
Oh, I see him now, yes. Hi, Ray. Okay.
Well, sounds like most of the kids that have talked so are kids. We're all kids because I don't remember the indoor toilets at all. I remember walking over to the Wild Cheese Factory, which is Arlene's home, and getting water, I don't know how many hundreds of times, and get halfway back in the wintertime and somebody started a snowball fight, tip over the water, and have to go back and get some more. But that was fun. I remember one time because we got to school, and of course the snowplows couldn't get back there, so my neighbor, Mr. Monty, came down with a Merceburger and a team of horses and picked us kids up at school and took us home. We had to drive through the fields actually because we couldn't get through the roads, but we got home in a Merceburger. My music teacher was Julia Benoit Landmark. I haven't heard that name, but that's who we had most of the years that I was there. And we had a lot of fun with her. She was a great lady. Other than that, I guess all the stories have been pretty well told, but glad I could see that on here.
Did you want to say something, Ray, or you want to do
I
it?
hardly got here and not talk about speaking.
Chop the wood to put in the stove. Nowadays they wouldn't allow that with it. Have you brought a picture? No, that's one. Okay. And Dwayne, did you want to say a few words?
If you want to, you could just talk.
Yeah, my name is Dwayne Strassman, and my father's name was Alfred, and we lived on a wild farm. And I went to Andrew Henry first, second, third, and half of fourth grade. And that's when we moved to Madison. And my father had passed away the previous July. And the other folks, there was a, trying to remember their names, Dave and Mary Grady. They were went to Andrew Henry at the same time, but they moved to Sun Prairie, I believe. Their parents bought a farm there. So they left about the same time that I did in 1950. And I do have a picture from that era that I do remember Mrs. Scott as a teacher. And I also, when I left, it was Mrs. Featherston, I think her name was, who I thought was great. But anyway, as it turned out, of course my father's buried here in Verona. As it turned out, I ended up meeting someone who went to Verona High School. And her maiden name was Lucy Lang. And I thought it was an awful small world. After the big circle that I made, because I ended up on the east side of Madison, going to a Catholic school there, St. Bernard's, and ended up going to Madison East. And I always used to laugh at my wife Lucy. She went to Verona and graduated with 32 people in her class. And I went to Madison East with 320. Who half of them, or most of them, I didn't even know. But it's good to be back in Verona. We've lived here for a bunch of years now. And ran into Arlene Burke at church, and she was mentioning about this get-together today. And I thought, well, I gotta go to that, because good old Andrew Henry. Anybody else?
Did you want to say a few words, Ray, or not?
Yeah.
Sure. Sure, say a few words.
My name is Ray Gust, and I went to Andrew Henry for 8 years before I went to high school in Verona. I didn't come here to make a speech. We're no good at that. I still live on the same road that the schoolhouse is on, Wayland Road, next to Highway M. I guess I was just anxious to see how many people I would know here today that went there. I know a lot of them are now no longer around. That's about all I know.
That's good. Thank you. Thanks, Ray.
I'm Jack Whitwer. I went all 8 years to that school, and my sister Jeanette and Kleins also went to that school. And I have a picture here that I don't know, I think it went around, and there's a few on here that I don't recognize. Donnie Wild and Bob Gust and Don Matz. They must have been in 8th grade then, and so I would have been like, I would say 3rd grade. But anyways, a couple of funny things. I don't know if Dick Durford remembers this. Lorraine Funk's mother, Martha, she brought Lorraine to school, and it was in the winter, and she ran off the road, and front of the car went into the ditch. So the teacher got a bunch of us kids out there to push, and we pushed and pushed and pushed, and we couldn't move her, and finally we stopped pushing, and she opened the window, and she says, "Should I take off the brake now?" You talk about the school program. I remember when the Jap struck in 41, that was in December, and you know what I thought of? Oh God, I bet you we're not going to have our Christmas program now.
Anybody else who's interested in speaking from Andrew Henry?
I just have one.
Okay, here's Nancy Flickiger Kitty.
Yeah. Well, I remember my mother, being that we were Catholic, on Fridays, she would make fried egg sandwiches and brought them to the school for everyone, and then we put ketchup on them. But I remember that, and I only went there when I was in 1st grade, so.
I'm her sister Pat Klosterman, Pat Flickiger Klosterman. I went there 6 years, and then Stoner School opened, so then we went to Stoner School. So, and I don't remember the egg sandwiches, but you know, she's younger than I. We're still eating egg sandwiches.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say regarding Andrew Henry? It was a good place, I agree. We did a good job in Andrew Henry.
Arlene, where did Andrew Henry come from?
We're trying to figure that out. That might be a job for you, Ed. Nobody seems to know except Doug Delk said.
I just assumed it
Yeah.
was probably the Ed Wild farm, because back then, the farmer would donate a piece of land for a school.
Yeah.
And
I have no idea. I mean, I tried to go into the computer in the South Central Library system, and
Arlene, I have a book here, it's Dane County Places and Names. And at Andrew Henry School, it says, it was named for Andrew Henry, an early settler. He was here before 1861. The school is on his former land at the crossroads.
perfect.
That's
Very good. Good historian. So, Miss Ruth, are you going to take over, or John, are you taking over? Or do you want me to take over?
What do we got to do? We don't have a lot to do.
Yeah, but if there's somebody else.
Yeah, if anybody else has any experiences from from the school or know somebody or any quirky things?
Because Marley Powers keeps mentioning her, and I can't, because Marley Powers lived there. Does anybody remember a teacher named Sir? She's still alive, and she lives in Mount
She
Orab.
wrote an essay, and now she's not here.
Oh.
She called me on Sunday, and she said she was writing an essay and didn't know if she could come, and I thought maybe she'd bring it.
Oh, maybe we can add that on to something else.
Known as Sir.
Richard?
My first three, teaching the first three grades was Miss Henry. She was from Vasco. And I understood it was her great-grandfather's last.
Oh, so you had a teacher that was named Miss, yeah, yeah, so you don't know. Yeah. Pardon? Miss Henry. Yeah, he called her Miss, yeah, Mrs., yeah, yeah. So maybe it was, I don't know. Yeah. Well, you know, everybody, we've done the school series the whole year here, and everybody always brings up the goiter pills. Every single one, so you either hated them or loved them. You know, somebody behind you would eat them or take yours on you. But I don't see any goiters in here. I think so. They must have done their job. But I think every single school experience was pretty common to all the rural schools around here. It was goiter pill day, and everybody has the exact same thoughts of them. You know. Somebody would not eat theirs and give them to somebody that would trade you the best sandwich for them. So, is there anybody else have any other experiences with the school or some suggestions or something?
Did it close in 65 like the others?
Yeah, was that 1965 when it closed? Does anybody remember that?
About that, 64, 65. An interesting note on that light, like we said before, most of these schools were given, a tract of land was given and schoolhouses built on it. There was never no deed to that property. And lots of these rural schools, when the landowner, and we went K-12, then those schools reverted back to the landowner at that time.
Yeah, right.
And our school board at that time had the foresight to go ahead and get a deed for that school, and then it didn't revert back to the fellow that happened to own the farm at that time, and it was then given to K-12 for them to sell for a profit.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know that. I know that because well, which school was it on Roman Road there?
Yes,
Stoner School. Yeah, that reverted back to the original owner, and I know. I think there was several other schools that it ended up. It wasn't as clean a cut thing as because maybe the property owner, you know, sold off the rest of the property and moved away, and then that thing sat there with no deed on. Yeah, I think that was kind of an issue on a lot of these. Yes.
That's customary for cheese factories as well.
Oh, yeah?
Cheese factory property often reverted back to the farmer.
Well, so cheese factories were also donated then?
Yes.
Well, who did donate them? The cheese factory?
Cheese factories oftentimes are sort of a co-op arrangement from local farmers.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that's, so Mr. Jones would donate, okay, this corner, build a cheese factory. But then when the dairies and so forth came on board in the larger cities, those cheese factories went down the tube, and then that product, building and all, usually went back to the original landowner.
Mm. Well, that's an interesting time. I don't think anybody donates any land for a school nowadays. It would be kind of nice if they did.
I have another question.
Pardon?
Is somebody living in the current Andrew Henry?
Yeah, is there anybody here that's living in the school?
That's owned by Vandergrift, I think, and one of the Vandergrifts lived there as far as I know.
I know they did some remodeling work on it, and, yeah, I don't know who's living in it. Jerry?
Another question. That brick building or whatever it's called, tile or, that.
Oh, that stone that they.
No, that's not the first building. I can't believe it is.
Oh, of the school, you think there's another?
Well, if you had a basement with a lower level furnace, I mean, that's pretty modern compared to the old pot-bellied stove in the wood framed schools that pretty much prevailed out in the country. So, do you have a date for that building being built?
Andrew, that's not the original building.
Oh, it is, it is.
Small building, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Before my time, but they said it was on in the northwest corner, there was a small building up there, and that was the original stone.
Oh, yeah, so you're right.
Yeah, I would assume there's a frame building or something there prior to.
Yeah.
If you look at the early plat maps, I'll bet the 1861 plat map shows the first school, whereas I doubt if the present building was there in 1861.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because it looked like, was it Maple School on Highway M in Fitchburg, right at, you know, that has no basement or anything in it, you know, I think that's original. I don't even know what they have for a foundation on that thing, you know, you walk in the floor, go up and down. Yes?
Whose picture is this that was passed around?
Janice. Can you identify anybody on there?
On the back row
That
here,
has been
she doesn't
unidentified?
know anybody, I know all but one of them, if you
Could
want
you
to
write
take
them in
down
there?
the names there.
Would you write them
I
in?
can come over and I'll tell you.
Okay, is there anything else here? We got, if not,
I'm Jack.
we want to thank,
Janice identified
Mrs. Burke
some that she.
for,
Can you-
organizing this as much as she did. And
This one I don't know.
do you have anything else you want to add to it, Arlene?
I'm not sure on that. And this girl, I don't know. Tall gal.
Yeah,
This one, this is Doris Reiner.
yeah, you've been busy, yeah.
Okay, this, Mrs. Smith was her name.
So, yeah, so we want to thanks a lot for doing that for us and taking an interest in this series that we've been
This is
doing.
Donnie Wild.
So we'll give you a big hand for that.
Yeah.